Well, for everybody that's actually here and on time, I want to make sure we're using the best use of Dan's time today. Maybe we should kick this off. Um, Welcome everybody that is in attendance right now and everybody that's going to join us as they kind of drift in. That's awesome. I had the privilege of working with Dan on an inspection not too long ago. And it was a really wonderful job, really appreciated it, but I didn't realize all the different things that he can do. So I was using him for something very specific, and I didn't understand the scope of what he can do until he came in and spoke in the office for our monthly meeting. And then it was not me. I think it was either Janice or Maureen had this wonderful idea that we really need to bring him in and have him do this session. So thanks so much, Dan, for making the time to come do this. And I'm just going to pass all of this over to you for you to say what you're going to say today.
Okay, yeah, no, thank you, Sherry. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me in. It's not something I do very often, so bear with me. I'll try to work through it. We can all struggle through together, but hopefully there's some useful information here that you guys can take with you. And if you have any questions as we go, the chat here possibly, but if anybody in the room, hesitate to ask as we go. Save until the end. We can talk about it. Any questions before we get started? No, perfect. So yeah, we just kind of want to go over some red flags we go through with home inspections. So I wanted to do it more so realistic, I guess. It's easy to go on Google and see a roof that's collapsed. Like we're not going to see that in an inspection. Typically, that's not going to get to a home inspection. They're going to know what they're getting into. So everything that I've included here today are things that I've seen, right? Actual pictures from inspections that I've been on. So red flags, but realistic flags that you could run into. Yeah, just a little bit about myself. I know I've met a few of you guys from the lunch, from inspections. I work in HRM, but I do go quite a ways out. Greenwood tomorrow, so yeah, go where the work is, I suppose. I've been a little bit over 2 years now with my business, with Lighthouse Inspections. Did my training through Dalhousie, registered with Internachi, and some of the other services like Sherry was talking about. I do radon, sewer lateral, well flow testing, septic inspections. Working on wet inspections, don't have it yet. Hopefully within the next year, I should have that going as well.
Nice, I love that.
Yeah. So just a little bit about myself. And then just kind of preface things. I know yours can all be a little bit different. Some are very anxious. Home inspections can be anxiety inducing. So just because it's a red flag with the inspection, with some of the findings that we see, I like to try to tell people that it's not the end of the world, right? Everything that's in this is fixable. It may be expensive, it may be something that's time sensitive, but it's all fixable, right? Try not to be too much of an alarmist with things like this.
Thank you. I was
Yeah.
just gonna ask
That's
that.
important.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so do you approach it as an alarmist?
No, I try not to. I mean,
More calmly and.
that's what I try. Yeah.
This could be a potential,
Yeah,
you wanna get more information.
exactly. I try to present some solutions. This is a problem, it needs to be fixed. Here's how we fix it.
Because they're looking right at your eyes. When you do that, they're.
I know, and then they're looking at us
To
and
see
they're going,
reaction.
why did we do this?
Makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I've always appreciated when inspectors that I've worked with sit and work like, don't alarm inspector, like, okay,
Yeah.
here's what it is.
Yeah.
Here's how you deal with it. This is roughly what it
Yeah,
could cost.
exactly.
It's not like, oh my God, it's like,
Yeah.
Or it might end up being nothing, right? Like,
exactly.
because your
It's possible.
job with the inspection is to ask the question
That's right.
and to have them be, the information be able to go further.
Yeah. All right. So the biggest thing, this is probably the same comment I get for every inspection, is I want to make sure the home's not going to fall down. Is it structurally safe, right? So structural concerns are seems to be the biggest thing that people are concerned. And that's fair. It's understandable. For the most part, houses are not going to collapse, right? So you may run into some issues where there have been, modifications to structural members. So this picture here, you see a joist that's been notched out. Typical to see with like HVAC equipment, plumbing. You see that quite a bit. Not by a professional. This is probably somebody that's done some work at home and notched things that they weren't supposed to do. So yeah, there is a little bit that you can notch on a joist that is safe, but this one obviously is too far in. Again, try not to alarm people. You know, this is something that could be a problem. You can sister it. So what you're doing is putting another piece up against it. You're anchoring it on either side, and it's giving it new structural support. So concerning, yeah, of course, fixable, absolutely, especially when there's access to it, right? So if you're access to it, that's if we see it. We wouldn't be able to see it otherwise.
Right.
Just an example, my own house, I'm doing a bathroom renovation right now, took the tub out and the P trap was right in the middle of the joist. I had about an inch left of it. And it's a 60-year-old home. It didn't collapse, but I fixed it. So, you know, it's not something you want to play around with, but is the floor going to completely collapse on you? Probably not. Again, one of those, you need to fix this right away, but you can do this. Again, kind of going on the structural end of things. So bowed foundations, this is something that can be a little bit more alarming. I haven't seen this often. This was on a house I did somewhat recently, actually. But you can see that stone wall bowing in like that. Whether that was built poorly and the stones were laid in a wrong direction at one point, I can't say. So we have to assume that this structure is pushing in on itself. What's caused by that is typically hydrostatic. So you have dampness in the soil, freeze thaw cycles, and it puts pressure on the house. With the stone homes, you'll see it kind of pushing in like that. With a poured concrete, may see more of like a lateral that's starting to develop. So those are structurally concerning. Again, it can be fixed. It's an extensive job. There's a lot that goes into it, but we're not structural engineers. I'll call it out and say this looks concerning. I think you should get this looked at. Have an engineer come in. They'll do a little bit more testing than I can do. Give them some options. So yeah, it's not common. I haven't seen this very much, but it's something that's, like I said, this is a house that I didn't expect.
So do you find stone, like stone is usually older,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
seepage, things happen, like with stone, I mean, that's kind of like something to look into, right? Be more
Sure.
concerned and
Yeah.
look, so what are we looking for when we see stone?
Well, like you said,
versus-
right, you will see
Seeping.
possible some seepage. I mean, you also have to remember it's a 100-year-old home.
That's
Maybe
it.
it's not going to fall over. Whatever
Right.
settlement that's happened, it's probably already happened. So you know, is it going to collapse? Probably not. Something that is common is, like you said, you may start to see some moisture intrusion into the basement. A lot of the times these are unfinished basements, and that's why they may have soil ground as
And
well.
some people spray that stuff
Yeah.
over top, and then will that keep it tight in
You
there?
can, yeah, you
Okay,
can.
that's
There are
not
some
me.
sealants that you can do.
It's like, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And that can kind of keep things.
Yeah, exactly. And there's companies out there that do basement sealants, especially on these older homes.
Idle space.
I was
That's
just
right.
sure if they dig a trench around the
Yeah.
edge of it,
Yeah.
right, so that the water is going
Yeah.
away from it.
That's really like a little
not
French
sitting-
drain inside.
Yeah.
Correct, sitting in.
Things like that.
Yeah.
That would just keep moisture, not like structural.
Not structural. Yeah. You know, like I said, this is not common to see bowing like
Yeah.
this. This would be something you want to check. Cracks. This is very common. You know, there's two types of concrete that's cracked and concrete that's got a crack. It just, there's no way around it. It's more the size and what you're seeing in the interior that can be concerning with these. Less commonly, these are structurally concerning, especially the horizontal types. They can be, but looking at like 1/8 of an inch in wider where they start to have some structural concerns. The biggest issue with these is moisture. If you have an opening from the outside to the inside, moisture. So the tiny little hairline ones, I'll put a note of it in there and usually just tell people to keep an eye on it. It's more if I can fit like a flathead screwdriver into it, then there's potential for moisture to start coming. If you can see it from the outside and the inside, then you get a good look at it. But a lot of the time, these basements are finished, so you can't really tell. Moisture meters, infrared, we do all that stuff to try to point whether there's a problem. Be a crack on the outside, you'll look a little bit closer in that one area. It's a good thing to get these repaired either way. If it's not an issue right now, it could turn into an issue. So usually I will recommend having it. If there's access to it, it's not an overly difficult thing. Things come in, like epoxy sealant can go in and close it all up so that it never becomes a problem. May have to dig down to get a little bit further down. May have take out some finishes. But it's a good thing to get fixed kind of proactively. Chimneys, other than the obvious issues of burning and things like that, these can be structurally concerning as well. This one is the worst one I've ever seen. But it's not uncommon to see spalling and some masonry and things like that starting to crack. This one's a disaster. This one's got to be torn over. So
Put your head. Favor.
so the biggest issue here obviously is if this collapses, right? That's going to crush the house. It's going to kill somebody on the ground. Physical injury is the biggest concern here. But one that you may not even think so much about is if things are starting to crumble away and there's pulling from the home, you get openings on the chimney and the home side, you could have that noxious gas that's starting to come in. And that's deadly as well, obviously. I always make a note of carbon monoxide detectors in homes, and it is rare. Not many people have them. Easy enough, you can just buy the plug-in ones that go in, so it's a good thing to have, especially if you have some wood burning appliance, any burning appliance of any sort. But yeah, this one in particular, it's a pretty bad one. Roofs, yeah, this is a common one too. So this is one of those things that has a life cycle, right? And everything in the house typically has some sort of a life cycle, and I try to kind of remind clients of that when I say that your roof needs to be replaced. It's no that happens every 20 to 30 years. It can be costly, right? You're looking at maybe $10,000 to $20,000, depending on what type of material you want to use, the size of the home, all these things that come into play. But you know, if you're not replacing it first move in, you might be replacing it in 5 years. We'll at least be replacing it in 20 years. So again, it's one of those things that you try to remind the client that this is part of home maintenance as well. Right? Everything has lifespans. Everything needs to be replaced as time goes on. One thing, especially with roofs, that's important is attic inspections. You may see like this roof here, it doesn't look horrible, like you can see some wear, but this is from the attic side, so there's water that's pouring in. So it may not look terrible from the street, but it may be a little bit worse than you think. So I'll usually go on the roof first, get a look around, get an idea of what I'm looking at, but I don't give them a determination until I get up in the attic as well to get a good look around.
Hey, Dan, can
So,
I
yeah.
ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, it's James.
Hey, James.
Hey, buddy. Just regarding the roofs, I'm curious when you do the inspection of the roof, because I've done inspections with you, as you know, and you send up the drone and then you go into the attic. Does that usually give you enough information to confidently say, like, are you usually able to give a couple year window, if you will, of when the roof should be replaced? Like, how specific can you usually get with when the roof will need to be replaced?
It's a good question. I can't give you 100% accurate, right? I can give you ranges typically. If it needs to be replaced right away, that's easy, right? Replace it now. If you're starting to see a little bit of wear, you might only be like 5 to 10 years in, so you can say, you know, you got at least 10 more years. I try not to be too specific because, you know, people will come back and say, well, you told me this, right? But if it's starting to look pretty old and pretty rough, usually I'll say, you know, we're looking at the next 2 to 3 years. So I guess a short answer to you is I can't tell you 100%, but I can give you, looks great, it looks okay, not looking
Right.
very good, or it looks horrible. Right?
Yeah,
If that makes
yeah,
sense.
and I mean, as you may remember, an inspection that we had together in the summer, that
Yes, I do.
happened where
Yeah.
you said horrible, don't move in.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I'm finding more and more like it's quite common for owners not to necessarily know the age of the roof, just
Sure.
because properties turn over, that information gets lost. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's something that I'm finding it can be difficult to explain to a client. We don't know when the roof was replaced for sure, but the inspection should be able to give us an idea of an approximate age of the roof. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And like I said, I'll give ranges. I won't give an exact number because I've gone on brand new roofs that I thought were 5 or 10 years old, and they just had premature wear, whether it was the exposure or where the house was located. But you know, even brand new roof that has a little bit of wear, it still looks good, right? If I said, you know, maybe it looks 5-ish, 10-ish years old,
Yeah.
you know, you've got 10 plus years, maybe more of that roof left.
Right.
But I think that's the biggest thing that clients want to know is how much life do I have left in it?
Right.
Age is great, but it's, you know, when do I need to replace this? So yeah, I think that we can give you a pretty good estimate.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Dan.
No worries. You remember that roof? That was bad. Yeah.
You know, it's bad when it's one of the ones you remember.
I do remember. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, that's it.
Exactly. So along the same lines is flashing. So flashing is what goes around penetration. So chimneys, vents, and this is kind of the most important part of the roof, really, because that's where all the issues come from, is the penetration. So for whatever reason, roofing seems to be that thing that people don't hire people for a lot of the time. They have a couple buddies and a case of beer and they slap it up. And, you know, like I said before, I've seen brand new roofs that look brand new. And a lot of the problems come from the flashing. So, you know, putting shingles up is pretty easy. You end it up, you nail it in, but this is where there's a little bit more complicated installations that go on. So this one right here is a vent flashing that was not done well. You could see all the moisture around it. It's a pretty common one. I see it maybe on every third or fourth roof is these just installed correctly. So usually, like I said, I'll call it out from the top end, go take a look on the other end. And if we're seeing something like this, then we're already starting to see some damage that's coming in. Again, I'll usually suggest that these things get corrected, because if it's not looking like this yet, it certainly could become that. If there is no damage, it's typically a pretty easy fix. Somebody come in and do the flashing properly. But once you're starting to get into this range, you're pulling up shingles, you're pulling up sheathing, there's a little bit more that goes into it. Obviously, a roof leak, cavity, this could be a problem all the way down to the foundation. So if you're starting at the top, you can see issues the whole way down. I just did a inspection last week. It was a roof that was installed, I think 2 months previously, and the chimney flashing wasn't done well. And you go inside and there's bubbling and everything all up the wall. So again, fairly common. One of those things that people
Had to replace all my siding and all my plywood, I don't believe all plywood underneath from flashing, and the chimney that was, we didn't know,
Yeah.
last summer.
Yeah.
I happened to be over at my hot tub and I was cleaning on the side of the house in my hand.
Oh no.
I was like, what the? And so we had somebody out and literally the flashing behind it was flashed behind the
Yeah.
chimney. Literally the flashing was dripping
Oh,
all over the water
no.
into my chimney. I have pictures that they literally took everything out right to my basement. You could see into my basement.
That's crazy.
It didn't because it was wall. Because it was from a like dry rock, because it was gold, I wouldn't cover it. Yeah, like $30,000 later. Because it was like all there was insulation.
Right.
There was right in through the plywood, like literally you could see into my living room. So there was gyp rock. We had to reside the whole thing because we went from cedar to vinyl.
You gotta do the whole house.
Right, you can't do part, you can't do the part of
Do you like the
Oh,
siding
I
color?
love
Well, that's good.
I saw somebody who did just do one end.
it.
And they changed the direction of the sliding.
No, they did it.
They did.
Good.
I keep driving by and going, man, wonder. They must have gonna change it. It's 6 months now.
And I still haven't. Wow, yeah.
Resale value.
For sure, and I know the resale value is
Still.
there, but
Still.
that's why I was like, for flashing? How was that?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, it's an exception, you know.
Very common.
Yeah.
Too, right? So yeah, no, that's a good example. And then another thing that we're looking at in the attic is the actual structure of the rafters and trusses. This is rare to see anything wrong, but this was a new build here. It's missing the ridge beam, so these attached to the ridge. I have no idea this happened. It must have just been an oversight by the builder, but completely missing the ridge beam. So
Get the inspection though.
what's that?
How did it need inspection?
I have no idea. No idea. This is under warranty, so the builder came in, they fixed it. However, but it's just crazy that something like that could happen.
Please tell me which builder.
Right.
Yeah.
They mix them right quick.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so this is something that you're not gonna see on a walkthrough, right? Nobody goes up into the attic. You don't have listing pictures of these, so it's an important area to get the inspection done on, because you may find something like this. So uncommon as it is, it's still possible, right? But, yeah, that was a weird one too.
Yeah, so people are like, oh, it's new build, I don't need an inspection. I'm
Yeah,
like, you'll never hear that from me.
yeah, I know. Never know.
It's great, it did a lot, but.
Yeah, exactly. So rodents, this is one that, freak out about, right? Nobody wants to hear rodents. I had one at one time. There was a dead mouse in the sump pump, and the lady just walked out of the deal completely because there's a mouse in there. I said, well, be fixed, right? Like, but people don't like to hear this at all. So unsealed openings in the exterior, the envelope of the house, this is how they're getting in, right? Coming in, having an exterminator come in and set traps and get rid of the mice itself is not overly difficult. It's more making sure that it doesn't happen again. So this one, there was about 6 or 7 of them in the basement of this place, and just down the street actually. So it's kind of nasty. Nobody wants to be dealing with that. And again, it's something that when you mention it, it's do freak out a little bit. So
Something I will do a lot for my clients. Love that is not one of them.
yeah, it's dead rotting bodies in the basement. So vermiculite insulation, this is one that I've seen actually surprisingly often around. It was used 1925 to 1985 are kind of the dates that are said that this is possible to be seen. So you're not going to see it in newer homes, newer builds, but it is definitely possible in some of the older ones. So the problem with vermiculite is specific mine that most of this material came from, somewhere in the States, Virginia or something like that. It had large asbestos in it. So I think like 90 to 95% of all vermiculite came from this one specific. It's possibility that vermiculite does not have asbestos, but really almost not even worth testing. You just assume that it does. Asbestos, it's a carcinogen. It's when it's breathed in. So if it's sitting dormant, it's not going to be a problem. It's when you start moving it around and start agitating it, it becomes airborne. When you breathe it in, where the issues arise. So realistically, you could leave this in the attic, disturb it, don't touch it, you'll never have a problem with it. People don't want asbestos in their house, and I can understand why. So removal of it can be, costly. There's a lot of abatement and things like that need to go into it. So we've had it where clients are like, I'm just going to leave it and throw some stuff over it. Okay. Yeah, that's, at least it's on them at that point. It's their choice. They understand what's going on. They understand the risks involved, and they can do what they want with it. Nobody's coming back to see what's done. Yeah, I've seen this quite a bit. Reason. And then there are other forms of asbestos as well. So, again, a common building material between like the 30s and 70s. It was used a little bit into the 80s, but definitely less common. It's great fire resistant material, and that's why it was used for quite a while. But then found out that it gives you cancer. So, so again, if left undisturbed, it's not an issue. You see it in ceiling tiles, like the 9x9 inch ceiling tiles are very common to have asbestos in. Old linoleum floor, the liners of them had it. Words around fireplaces, between living spaces, it was very common there as well. Again, if you don't agitate it, it's not a problem. But if you're thinking about most buyers right now, if there's a home that's from the 1960s, 70s, whatever the case is, the first thing they want to do is renovate it. So that's when it becomes a problem. You start ripping ceiling tiles, it becomes airborne. So I always recommend, if it's something that looks borderline, get it tested. It's not a difficult thing to get tested. There's labs around the city. I don't think it's overly expensive to get the testing done either. That way you know what you're dealing with and rid of it properly.
Well, I haven't had to deal with that per se, very fortunate, but when it does, I wonder with other realtors that have dealt with this. You get it tested, you understand what the situation is at that point in time. If you're a listing agent, do buyers usually say, I want all the floor taken out and replaced? Like, do they go that far? Like, does anybody, situations like that?
Some have, and some have just asked for a price adjustment.
Exactly, yeah.
Just to accommodate.
It's been either way. Because when you do the abatement, It's quite a process.
Yeah.
You have to seal everything off, they're in like hazmat
Hazmat
suit, they're. And then they have to pay extra to dispose of it, cause it can't go into regular landfill.
Right.
So it goes into environmental landfill and.
You get assessment, specials come out, dictate what it would be worth, and then either do the whole back or price reduction.
So again, like I said, these are the buildings that people want to renovate. Once you start renovating, that's what. So,
What's it take to test? Very
pretty quick, yeah.
Similar to like a water test.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay,
Yeah.
I had it in an old house around hot water pipes, the insulation.
Yeah.
Pipes.
Okay.
Yep.
It's like a wrapping that they give.
Yes,
you'll
yeah.
find.
Is it
Yeah.
white?
Well, it can be a lot of different colors, but a lot of times it's like grayish looking.
Okay.
I've seen it white as well, even brown.
And they take the
Um,
silver electrical tape
Okay.
and then wrap it around,
Yeah,
and it starts all,
Yeah,
Just attack us there.
yeah, that's right.
all stuff.
So good then.
It's fine.
right, exactly. Slap something on it.
It's good to know. It's like.
Yeah, so another one that's almost on every single inspection is there's some sort of deck issue, right? This kind of goes along with the roofs. Everybody does this on their own and nobody knows what they're doing. So there's, there's a long range of deck issues, from minor stuff that can be replaced along the way to, don't step on this deck. There's a big range there. But it's rare to go to an inspection and say this deck is perfect. It doesn't happen very often. So yeah, it can be quite dangerous, right? If it's especially an elevated deck, it's a second level, people buy a house, they want to have swarming parties, 20, 30 people on the deck. You could be looking at a collapse. Before I got into this work, I was a paramedic actually, and I did a call like that. It can be really, really bad. So this is one that I don't, if I see issues, that's it. This one you don't want to mess around with. Yeah, for whatever reason, people don't want to hire people for a deck. They can be costly, right? The cost of lumber, I think everybody knows it's not cheap right now. So depending on the size of the deck, these can be a costly repair. So this one here was a joist that's completely rotted through, right? It looks like about a third of it is completely rotted. Stepping on it, you could feel it squishing down. This was a rental property, so tenants were sitting on the deck all day, 10 feet up. See some crazy stuff. Footings, boards are another big area of concern. Decks could be an hour conversation in themselves. Usually I don't try to have like a 30-page report specifically on decks. If I see a ton of issues, try to condense it, fix the deck, rather than having a 100-page report. So, if there's little things, we'll pick it apart, but if it's everything, one kind of blanket statement, just get rid of it and start over.
Actually seen them when the deck wasn't even attached to
Mhm.
the house.
My leg got caught in one last week.
Oh, no.
Big old bruise. So then you fix that, put that on the report. Okay. My leg get caught in it.
Oh, gosh.
Really shocking.
Yeah, they're not even attached to the house, that's like.
So crawl spaces, this is maybe my least favorite part of the job. It's another area that you don't see, right? Nobody sees it during a viewing. Yeah, nobody's crawling into the house. Probably, I don't know. Maybe you have clients that do, but most people don't. It can be difficult to get in there and get a good view. I've seen some that I can't physically fit my body into, so we try to look as far as we can. But anything that we can get in there and get a good look on is key. So there's structural concerns under there. This one here, they had the vapor barrier there, but they had the air conditioning condensate draining into the crawl space, which is bizarre. I don't know why they would go do that. So you have standing water there. Standing water in your crawl space, you're gonna have bacteria growth, humidity that's going to start to cause rot into the floor joists. So there's a lot that you can see and a lot you can learn from the crawl space, but again, it could be another conversation in its own. But it's a big one for areas that do have crawl spaces. See, not all of the homes around here do. We have a lot of basements in this climate, but there are still a few, especially with mobile homes with spaces. Water damage. So this is one I take particular time with for sure, because It's common. It's one of the most common home insurance claims in Canada as well. I can come from different places, right? A lot of sources here. This one, you can see with the infrared, the dark areas, that's all moisture. This was coming from a fridge with a water dispenser on it. Those are notoriously bad for leaks, so I always try to push them away a little bit just to see what I'm dealing with underneath. So this one went through the floor into the basement, starting to see bubbling on the basement side. Yeah, it's not. It's always difficult to tell you how much it's going to cost or how much the extent is. We can check moisture meters and infrared. You're gonna have to pull up the floor, fairly large area around, see what you're dealing with. So, in terms of cost, it's hard to say, but it's going to take a little bit of work to tell you exactly what's going on. And I don't want to leave this for long because it's going to lead to rot, it's going to lead to mold. You do a lot of issues. And window leaks. This is a pretty common one too. Older windows are pretty bad for it, but I've seen even newer ones that just weren't installed correctly. So this is an area I always go around with my moisture meter on because I've seen it so many times. Every window, every door, I always check all the way around those.
94%.
It is, yeah. And that one there, it's not incredibly obvious either, right? There's nothing bubbling. There's nothing really showing. This one here is a little bit obvious. There's no doubt about that one. But yeah, that's why I like to check with some of the tools that I have because to the eye, you're not going to see that type of stuff. Yeah, for sure. And obviously, if you leave that for a long period of time, things are going to start to rot and mold and mildew. So yeah, right into this one.
See wood windows. That showing signs of damage. So I have mostly when a client's coming to a house, as soon as they see a wood window, they're like, "Oh my god, I have to be replaced."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Ah."
Yeah.
Well, necessarily.
No.
Not. I mean, yeah, you probably want to replace it for an aesthetic view,
Yeah.
but like it's not necessarily damage,
No.
especially if you don't
Yeah.
see any damage.
Def-
So, what do you tell clients if they're like, "Oh, it's wood, it's got to go"? Like,
Say the same thing as you.
Yeah.
It's not more of a cosmetic aesthetic type of thing.
Yeah.
You'll get a little bit better R value with the newer windows, you get better seal in the home. For the most part, it is going to be cosmetic. So if they want to do that, that's great. There's a little bit of maintenance involved with wood windows, so staining,
Yeah.
painting,
Yeah.
keeping it sealed. Always mention that to them as well to try to stay on top of the maintenance. But
yeah,
no, you don't have to replace those for sure.
yeah. Usually clients come in and they're like, "Oh my god, it's wood that has to go."
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe.
Yeah.
You know.
And then again, like
Right? Oh, yeah. It's just gotta replace those windows before I'm coming in here.
that's a tough.
There's trouble with it, they're probably not gonna replace
Yeah,
it for you just because you don't like the look of it.
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough one to sell. So yeah, mold and mildew. I mean, obviously we don't take samples and run tests to confirm these things, but if like a duck talks like a duck, it might be. A lot of the areas that I see these in are attics, closets, corners, things like that. And yeah, I have had a lot of people try to hide this stuff. So fresh paint, or you see a bottle of bleach sitting on the floor, like there's some little red flags that'll point you towards that. But that's right. Exactly. So yeah, again, we can't tell you 100% what the extent is. I can see it on the surface. So how far does it go? Sure, you got to open up some walls to really get a good indication of what you're dealing with. Leave this over time. It can be obviously a health concern, breathing in mold and mildews. What you want. But yeah, I've seen a lot of people trying to hide this stuff. So there's no problems here. I just wanted you guys to see this basement. That's the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, so you're done.
What's that? I did, yeah.
It has a red
You know?
color in the split.
That's wild, eh?
No, it's just, I'm sorry.
And golden globes. That's
It's,
pretty good. Watch the spot down there.
Yeah, no code violations, but I felt a little violated. Get in there. Fine, I just seen that. You guys should see it too, yeah. See some crazy stuff, I guess. So this one ties into what I was just talking about with the mold is new repairs that are a little bit suspect. I don't want to tell you guys every time a fresh painted wall they're hiding something. That's obviously not the case, but something here, you can sort of see on the stringers a little bit of moisture there. The foundation was all freshly painted. There were some holes drilled into the slab, so they were having moisture coming in. They drilled the hole so it would drain through. And yeah, they were trying to hide it the best they could. The first rainfall, they came back and there was water everywhere again. So again, I don't want to tell you all sellers are doing crazy stuff, but you're going to run into stuff like that. So it's always good to have little red flags that go up when you're seeing fresh paint or a random hole drilled into the concrete slab.
That's right.
Just yeah, you know, a little bit of an indication of some suspicious stuff going on there.
I've actually failed because like for things like that, and then the seller said, well, now we have to disclose that to everyone else.
Yeah.
Like, yes.
They have to, right? If something comes up, if they're aware of it, they're supposed to, right?
Well, if they come up with one inspection, they come up with another.
Right, and that's what I was telling them, it's gonna come up again, so you might as well face it.
So if you like the offer you have, let's just deal with it. Because it could potentially cost you more down the road.
Yeah.
You're going on.
And the sale of the home, period.
Do I have to disclose that now that we know?
Well,
Yes.
you know what we all do, what sale fall.
Yeah,
Right.
can you help me understand what happened?
Yeah, because it's a great house, why did it fall? Well, my seller got the report back and they didn't want to do anything, and now they don't want me to tell you that. It's great.
Right, that was me not to tell you.
So,
Yeah, so this is another one. It leaks. This guy had a bucket underneath his sewer clean out.
Oh.
Yeah, it was pretty disgusting. He was actually home at the time, so I told him, you know, how long's that pipe been leaking? He said, I have no idea what you're talking about. But it was the bucket full of feces. So, you know, yeah, keep an eye on, again, little red flags that you may even just pick up from what the sellers have been doing. That one's a big one, sure.
here's the question then, this is where it could get interesting. But we can tell that there's a bucket there,
Mhm.
they're aware of it,
Mhm.
we see it during the viewing. Well, the question would be, you knew that it was leaking because you saw the shit bucket.
Yeah.
So I would still push for things to get fixed. Can they not? They can decide
Well,
like,
you
both
knew-
sides feel it.
You saw that when you offered.
So that's something you'd want to discuss prior to
Offer.
potentially offering to say, what's the situation with your bucket?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's
No,
Go on,
because I think
call it
important
out.
as realtors to ask that question,
Yeah.
because we're
Yeah.
aware of it, but we, you know, do you know what I mean? Because some people can say,
And you
"Yeah,
saw in, like in clause 7. Buyer reserves the right to investigate further. Once she
Bucket in the basement.
there's a bucket with feces in it.
You know what I mean? Like, it's important as a realtor, to tell your client these things, because you could go through this whole thing, so that's,
sure.
They
Yeah.
can come back to it.
because it happens, you saw it. It's not,
Absolutely,
to me,
yeah.
not with. shit, never
Yeah.
mind, bucket, but with
Never know.
water.
So yeah, the next one is just aging heating equipment. This one's common. I mean, a lot of people put a lot of money into their homes, and typically it's more, you know, the kitchen, the bathroom, aesthetics type stuff, which I understand. But a lot of the time, the heating equipment gets kind of pushed and pushed and pushed. So typical life expectancy on these is around 25. There's some higher end ones that'll go a little bit longer. If you maintain them, they can definitely go a little bit longer than that as well. But yeah, pretty common to see these quite old because people don't want. They're expensive, in $15,000 to replace these things and the new bathroom or whatever, right? So people push this a little bit further. You should be getting annual service on these done as well. Nobody seems to do that. Usually you'll see a sticker on there with a date stamp of when it was done, but it's rare. And you know, people leave it and forget about it until the middle of winter when it dies, and then why did you tell me about this? You know, exactly. So can be a tough sell, I guess, on your guys' part. If it's working, it's working. Oh, that's beyond my point in terms of negotiations, but I'll recommend like you should look at getting this replaced, and it's fairly expensive.
If you had the history.
Mhm.
Where they were doing annual maintenance on it and they had the efficiency report.
Right. Mhm.
As well. Would that, as an inspector, make you more confident?
Sure,
that-
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, usually I had a boiler similar to this. When I had my home inspection done, it was same. It was, you know, it's aging. I replaced it at the 34-year mark, so I let it go a little bit. And it was still working. So
Yeah.
it's not like it's going to hit 25 and die. You've got life there as long as you maintain it. If you see this maintenance records, and it's a good indicator that it's probably going to last a little bit longer than something that didn't get maintenance done. But usually, how I'll present it is it's aging, maintenance has been done. Just be prepared. Right? It's an expense that could come up. Continue to maintain it. You might get 5, you might get 10 years. Just be ready. It's or maybe on your end to replace it so that you don't have an issue in the future. Because, like I said, it's fine until it's not fine, and then you're freezing. So,
Hi, Dan. I've got a question with regards to boilers.
Sure.
Janice had brought up something interesting about, if it's been maintained every year and you have a log for it and there's an efficiency report. Does an efficiency report usually go along with an annual service or when a service
Usually,
happens?
yeah,
Okay.
typically I get mine done every year, and they do run like not like the home energy efficiency, like a different type of thing. So they'll see how efficient the actual boiler is running, and that usually does go along with the service itself. So whether they put a stamp on it that tells you the actual efficiency, that's what the company does that I use. Maybe it'll be paperwork and an actual physical report that they have, but yeah, typically it is part of an annual inspection. They'll come in, they'll kind of rip it apart, give it a good cleaning, give it a good efficiency test to see how well it's functioning.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So vent issues. So this one is a gas-fired water heater, and that vent isn't going anywhere. So that's incomplete combustion. You get carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide. I think we all know what that does. So was filling up the basement with carbon monoxide over long periods of time. I have no idea how it wasn't an issue for them. So this was flagged, deal with it right away, fix it now, kind of thing. It's rare. This is, I think, the only time I ever saw something like this. You may see smaller things like a little hole in a pipe that could be given small amounts, but for it to just be completely discharging into the home is insane. So hopefully, if it's something this bad, it's something your clients are going to have to deal with. We'll flag it; it gets fixed. Like that needs to be done faster. But again, smaller holes are something that people may not notice, right? So goes back to the carbon monoxide alarms. It's always recommended to have those in your home. Right?
Here.
I have never, please.
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
Not.
So yeah, knob and tube. It's rare now. Earliest method of electrical wiring. We have some old homes in Halifax, so there were some circuits with it. I haven't seen it often myself. Or what I've seen is 1 or 2 circuits that got missed. So people have come in, redone most of the home, but for whatever reason, you've got 1 or 2. I've never seen an entire home, a tube. So I said many insurance companies, all insurance companies are going to need this to be replaced. So they don't have a ground wire, which is a safety mechanism, obviously. So that could lead to shock, fire. The wires are exposed. There's a laundry list of issues with these. Typically, highest amperage you can get on these are 60. So if you see like a 60 amp fuse box, again, that's a little bit of a red flag. That could be a problem. Yeah.
Gonna say, what would be the indicators if it's all behind the wall?
So yeah, for sure. Some indicators, and like you said, you may not be able to see it. In an attic, you probably won't see any insulation because you can't put insulation on top of this. So it may be completely bare up at the top, and that's where you may be able to see it well. 60 amp fuse panels, like you said. Sometimes 2-prong outlets. So if you don't have that ground prong, that can be a little bit of a red flag as well. So there's a couple of things that can kind of set off some red flags. Again, it's not always right. You may have 2-prong and it's not a tube. It's not 100% of the time they go hand in hand, but little things that can be red flags. And then hopefully when you have your inspection done, you're going to be able to pull the panel away a little bit and you can get a better look.
Is it 30? Which it would be.
It could be anywhere, right? So if they're doing the entire home, ripping out entire finishes, because these aren't wires that you can leave, right? So it could be pretty extensive. If it's 1 or 2 circuits, it might, it's going to be a lot less than that.
Well, with the home inspection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I messaged a friend of mine who's an electrician and said, like, what are we looking at? He said, if it's the whole home, like
Yeah,
20, 30,
right.
maybe more.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be a wide range depending on how many circuits you have and how much needs to be replaced. Again, it's not common. Most homes are gonna have this already taken care of, hopefully by now. But with the older homes in Halifax, it's definitely a possibility. So yeah, again, along those same lines, aluminum wiring. I had this in my house when I bought it. It was common in the mid-60s to the mid-70s. That time frame of home is something to look out for. Paper material, higher availability than copper at the time. Expands and contracts, so that's where a lot of the problem comes in. So at the terminal screws, so right here, have that expansion and contraction, and that'll slowly cause it to pull away. Then you have arcing, which leads to overheating, sedation of dissimilar metals as well. So if you have for connections, these all can lead to overheating. So again, insurance is not going to be happy with these. They're going to want something done with it. Pigtailing is the most common correction for this. This is what I had to have done on my house. So what they do is they'll, at each connection, they'll attach a copper pigtail, so a small length, to the aluminum with the proper wire nuts, the proper antioxidant paste, and then the copper goes to the connection itself. Wire in the wall is not a problem. There's nothing wrong with a straight length of aluminum wiring. It's at the connections where the issue is. So this is a little bit different from knob and tube, is you don't have to rip everything out, start over. You just have to fix the connections.
So it's just the connection to the panel?
Panel, the outlets, the lights, anywhere where there is that connection. And then these are the ones that are the concern, the solid ones. So you'll still see these used. These are the larger gauge wires. So for your 40 amp circuits, your 30 amp circuits, those ones are okay. Never been a problem, and especially with newer aluminum, you still see those used in newer construction. Not a concern. It's the single smaller strand ones that have always been. Oh, they see that on an inspection report that there was aluminum. If it was multi-strand, should never be a problem.
What is the best thing to see plugged in there? You say copper?
Or yeah, copper's what's 90+% of the homes from here. That's gonna be the so. Fuse panels. There's nothing inherently wrong with fuses. They work. They're almost a little bit more reliable than breakers in a sense. There's been instances of breakers that don't trip when they're supposed to trip. Fuses always blow when they're supposed to blow. One of the problems with these is the age, right? So typically you're not going to see anything 1970s up that use fuses. These are older panels, and these again goes along with your boilers, your furnaces, your roofs. They do have lifespans on them. 25 to 40, somewhere in that range. So just given age alone on fuse panels, it's typically a good idea to get these upgraded to breakers. Breakers are more convenient. Nobody likes buying fuses and switching them in and out. One of the other issues that I see a lot with fuses is wrong size. So if somebody has a 15 that's blowing all the time and they put a 20 in and it doesn't blow anymore, that's great. I don't have to replace the fuses anymore, but you're overloading it now at that point. Exactly. Yeah, but that's pretty common, right? And you can't do that with a breaker unless you actually switch the breaker out. So yeah, replacement again, it's going to be a bit of a range depending on what you want to do. If you're going 100 to 100, it may be like $3,000. If you're going to upgrade to a 200, we're seeing more costs. Right? Could be a little bit more, but usually recommend these get replaced again, just on age alone.
With panels, regardless of fuse or breakers, I can't remember. I had an inspector tell me once there are certain types of panels. And he told me the name and I should have wrote it down at the time, but that are more, that had issues with them at a specific time and that it's good.
Probably dab lock.
Yes,
I think that's what.
yes, in
Yeah.
red.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
would know.
Yeah.
Snap lock.
Federal Pioneer stab lock. Yeah.
Yes, and common in condo buildings.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those ones, I see those quite often around here.
Me too.
Breakers don't trip. There were specific breakers, I think, mid-90s that were produced for that specific type of panel that had a history of not tripping when they're supposed to trip. So can't really tell which type of breaker was used on them. So usually electricians will recommend if you have that, just get rid of it and start over. So there was a recall in the States on those. It was never actually formally recalled in Canada. So you can't force anybody to do anything with that, but to me, if it's my house and my family's safety, I'm recommending getting it replaced. I usually would preface, like, weren't recalled, you technically have to do anything with this, but you probably should. Give them a little bit of literature of why, maybe, like, send them a link.
I saw one in a mini home there
That's
the other
what
day.
I was
Okay, yeah, yeah.
In a mini home,
Yeah,
I saw one in a condo and that's kind of.
yeah,
not even a condo, you think, it's all together.
yeah, like the panels and the conduits, I've seen them there too, yeah.
I would think as a condo board, right, that the condo board would
Want
Want to do that,
sure.
because I'm like, even if he replaces his own panel, the rest of the building,
Yeah, you still have all
all your neighbors got it, right? So.
Yeah, for sure. And then, yeah, overheating, so this is something that you'll probably see more at the panel itself, so the cover off, again, nobody's ever gonna see this without taking the cover off. Shouldn't take the cover off, we do, but most people shouldn't, because obviously there's live electrical back there. So what could be causing this? It could be a lot of things, like overloading circuits, not proper size breakers, weak connections, so similar with the aluminum, like we were talking about, where they slowly pull away, you get that overheating that takes place there. We usually look at panels with the infrared as well to see if one specific circuit is overheating a little bit. If it's caught early, it should be easy to fix for an electrician to come in and take a look at it and get it corrected, but obviously if it's not caught early, and it can be too some pretty catastrophic stuff. Yeah, into plumbing a little bit. Probably be, yeah, probably be. So yeah, these ones, 70s to the 90s, I see it quite often around Halifax. It was plastic piping, inexpensive, easy to install. They're quite flexible, so people use them quite often because it was a lot of ease of installation there, less elbows, less connections. One of the issues with it is a lot of the
Plumbing for dummies.
Exactly. So yeah, a lot of the common, like, water treatment chemicals that are used by municipalities or whatever, they caused a lot of degradation in these pipes, and those led to leaks. So it was a pretty common issue. A lot of insurance companies aren't going to be happy with these, whether they require you to replace them, they'll give you a higher deductibles, higher rates. There's going to be something involved that they're going to want a little bit more upfront for the potential issues that it presents. So obviously replacing all the pipes, right? Most of it's not exposed. Sometimes you'll have a lot of it that's exposed in the basement, and then it's not too bad. But a lot of the times this is going to be potentially living with this and having a risk involved, unless you want to rip out all your finishes. Funny.
Did they say on average, like, do they eventually they will break? Like somebody, I've heard that after
do
30
get-
years,
yeah.
good luck to you.
They
right?
give life expectancies on them, and I think typically like 25 to 30 is a life expectancy on those. So
we'd be hitting that.
you're hitting it now, basically.
100%.
Yeah.
Cause I know a client of mine, well, they bought the house, anyway, he ended up, seller before ended up pulling it all out.
Okay.
Holes in all the drywall, fixed, it was a
Yeah.
big ordeal,
A
but now
lot.
that he's done it,
Yeah.
oh. Jumping ahead with the Kitech is a little bit different, don't you find? Because there's more, even though Kitech similar.
Mhm.
Insurance companies, some of them are still.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm glad you're talking about Kitech too, because Poly B is an automatic like
Right.
trouble.
Yeah.
Kitech, still similar, but it's not as.
Isn't Kitech more of the hot water?
And floor heating.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, it's
It
floor
is.
heating versus.
For sure. And I think you're right for the most part. It's like you said, it's a little bit more specific in what type of Kitech that there is an issue with. And
Mhm.
it's more at the connections themselves with the Kitech. Again, same sort of idea. Insurance is going to want to know about this. They're going to probably have higher rates, higher deductibles. Again, replacement, fairly expensive, but it's possible. But you may be living with these and for the best, unless you want to rip out all your finishes, right?
Well, and people, permanate them.
Yes.
At the furnace and then just put hot water based board
Yep.
heaters.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
what I,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pass the whole thing and do electric
Yep.
heaters.
Yeah, I've seen that a couple of
I
times.
also have had a couple of inspectors say when Kitech is in poured concrete.
Mhm.
I'll love you,
Right.
because it's old.
Yeah, Prussian, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, I
Okay,
I couldn't quite hear that. When Kitech is in poured concrete, what happens?
Want to make something up, Sherry, to something really good.
Genesis.
Make it salacious.
It's poured concrete and high-tech, I don't know.
That is what's true.
I know what you're saying. It would kind of like
Yeah,
compress it almost.
That's right, so
because it's
that,
sealed.
and it
Yeah.
depends on what the temperature is of your water and how high you have your hot water. Heat the floor for in-floor, but I had, Sherry had a couple of inspectors tell me that poured concrete is not as much of a concern. Cause it's held together with the concrete, right? Like there's so much pressure from the concrete.
Okay.
Eventually,
Okay,
yeah.
so that's
I'm
okay.
not a concrete or a professional or inspector or anything.
I think if it were me, my suggestion in a situation like that, like you spend poured concrete and floor heat, I would say cut it off. You can leave the pipes on the floor, forget about them. You never see them again, and you would go maybe electric baseboard.
Yeah.
That would be probably my recommendation to go that way, because you don't have to worry about replacing them. Exactly, cut them out. I know people like in floor heating and it's nice, but yeah, I know what you're saying though. You might be right there, but there's still some potential for seepage into the concrete.
Yeah. And it's interesting, we didn't have the issues with it in Canada that the States did.
Mhm.
Well, we have colder climate.
Yeah.
Where we use hot water more. Right, like it's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Whatever happened.
Well, they have more of an issue.
Yeah. Like it's significant.
Yeah,
True, like,
yeah, it's a good question.
there's no.
Just higher numbers, maybe. So yeah, usually you'll see like a blue and an orange pipe. Not always the case. There are orange that are PEX, there is blue that's PEX, so it's not 100% telltale. If you see the Kitech stamped on it, that's easy. You'll not always see that though. The one stamp that'll tell you for sure whether it's Kitech is the B137.10. So I'm sure you'll all remember that. But that's kind of a telltale. Like if you see that, it is because they're not always labeled. That's right. And again, some sellers I've run into that only they don't know whether that's true or not. It's possible, right? If they built the home in the 90s, they may have had it put in, they never knew about it, go to sell, and it's news to everybody. So it is possible. Some people might just be hiding it. I don't know. And so lead pipes, this is a little bit more rare. These are getting replaced. They were somewhat prevalent in Halifax. Usually before the 60s. Still a little bit used in the 60s and into the 70s, but it's usually 60s and before. Any house after that, you can see it too often. Most homes within the home, it's going to be rare, but it's possible. One way to really tell is a scratch test. So scratch the pipe itself, comes with that kind of silver shiny color. It's an indicator that it could be lead. There is a database. Halifax Water has a database of all the lead service pipes within the peninsula, and they have a repair schedule right now that they're going through, and they're trying to replace all of these. But you might run into health concerns with the lead in the drinking water. So,
Were you saying it's more in Halifax than it is eventually? Or you
from my
saying
experience,
Halifax has more base?
both. Yeah, maybe a little bit of both. There's more known, I guess, in Halifax, and maybe that's the reason why is there is that database. But
Yeah.
really, the only time I've seen it has been on the peninsula. So you can see it other places for sure. Yeah, there was.
Dan, are those being replaced at the expense of the homeowner or the city?
Service pipe to the home is being replaced by the city at the expense of the city.
Okay, thanks.
It's like I said, there's a schedule to it right now, so some people are waiting. There's lead in the home. My understanding is that that's on you. The actual pipe to the house that the city is working on.
There be pipes within the house.
Could be, yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen it much, but there could be. Only time I've actually seen the lead is the actual entrance pipe to the home. Like it say that if possible.
Right.
So waste plumbing kind of going along with that. If you catch it early, it's fairly easy. This one here, the slope is wrong on it. You can see it's a little bit of a U. So when I actually lifted up on this, it was completely full. So this connection right here.
Pocket under it.
Shut up.
That's
Say no steps. So this connection right here, you can't see it in the picture, but it's starting to wear. It's just a matter of time and it's gonna be a disgusting mess, right? So
Oh, that'd be so nice.
catch this now, it's pretty easy. This ABS is easy to work with. They cut it back, put a new connection on, put more supports, and they reslope it. But a lot of the time, the stuff isn't visible during home inspection. Some of it can be buried, some of it can be behind finishes. So we can see that it's great, but yeah, it can be a mess. Got a leak in one in my house one time, and it can be hard to find too because it's like a supply pipe. If it's leaking, it's obvious. It's constantly leaking. Your basement floods. Everybody knows it. We had it in a standpipe, so it was only when we was the kitchen sink. There was a slow drip. It's a little bit of mold starting. Where's that coming from? Walls out, couldn't figure it out. Then wife was up doing the dishes. So, oh, this it's little pinhole leaks. They can be challenging to find. So supply pipes are pretty obvious. So contaminants in the water. This is a little bit more so on the rural properties with the wells. Again, usually insurance is going to require proof of potable water, at least to know what kind of, if there's bacteria in there. E. coli, other forms of like coliform bacteria are the big things that they're looking for. A lot of different tests that you can do, metals, arsenic, all that type of stuff as well. I usually recommend that, at least for the first time around, so you know what you're dealing with. But at least know if you've got bacteria in your water. So it's a big one. So there's different water treatments depending on what you find. Right? There's ultraviolet, reverse osmosis, water softeners. It's all going to depend on the results of your water testing. I was just at a house on Sunday that had a UV system, and they do have bacteria. So you do have to maintain do maintenance on these as well, right? So change that bulb out every 9 months, somewhere around there. If you're not doing your maintenance on the UV system, you could still run into problems. So just because there is that treatment there doesn't mean that it's 100% going to be fine. So this one, again, this isn't sort of a typical home inspection. It's an add-on service, but I usually recommend it. I had it done on my house when I was done. It's a very expensive fix that could be work, right? Yeah.
Oh, it loves it when they get a chance.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
best case scenario. It's a 10-minute inspection that saves them $20,000, right? And I said, well, that was quick and easy. Why did I pay for that? But this one here is completely collapsed, right? Completely clogged. There wasn't actually any backflow into the home either, so there was no signs of it being a problem, but there will be eventually.
Right.
It's one of the, I know, it's easy for me to say, I provide that service, but that's probably the one add-on service. This is a good idea. You should get this looked at.
Always.
Yeah.
Please, I don't care if there's a tree in the front lawn or not. It needs to be done. There's no tree, like, please don't really.
It doesn't matter sometimes. So leach fields, anything to do with the septic system, these can be costly. It could be a lot of work. This one is just a quick video I'll show you of that failed. So it's starting out fine. Kind of has a dip down here. And it's this the entire way out after that. So completely full of water. It's not draining anywhere. So that one had to be replaced. So okay, it's pretty much all you see afterwards. I won't bore you too much with it, but well, these are some of the things that we're looking for with the leach fields to make sure that they are draining, because you don't want it full of water, obviously. So a little bit of standing water can be normal, especially if the drain holes are above that. A little bit's nothing to be too concerned about, but because the entire pipe was completely full. So well, you catch this early and you get things dealt with before you get to
New field.
new fields.
Did you know, home septic field?
Yeah, this one was all replaced. Yeah. There can be a lot of other issues with the septic as well, but that's kind of one of the big ones that we're looking for with the field itself. Yeah, no problem. That's pretty much all I had. Again, kind of remember that all the issues, everything can be corrected, right? So again, I try not to be an alarmist, like you said. Everything can be fixed. Nothing's impossible. Usually if we get to the point we're doing a home inspection, client saw something in the home that they love, they want to be there.
And they're willing to spend money
You're
on
willing to
it. By
spend,
that point, there has to be something pretty significant
exactly,
that they're
Yeah.
gonna walk away.
yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it's, we were looking for issues, it could be a stressful time. But try to present it in a way that's the problems, here's how we fix it. This stuff can all be repaired. I've never walked into a home that I said, run away, don't buy this place. That's not for me to say, and I've never seen one that, so that can be fixed. So yeah, if you guys have any questions or anything, please ask now. My contact information, if not, it comes up later. Yeah, that's good.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, that's a
Fantastic.
a little over an hour.
No, it's good. It's really helpful information.
Seeing it, real life stuff.
For sure.
right?
Yeah, and I try to do that.
What's that? You're like,
Let me take a picture and
Yeah.
send it to my husband now.
Do I do that?
All
You're
on.
right. Yeah,
I'm glad
I
to
do
hear
it
that.
too.
I
I do
really
it too,
can't
it's
hear
your
that.
turn, I send it
My
to him.
husband's a builder, and I'm
Okay,
like,
yeah.
what is this?
To be fair, I do that sometimes. So I have a lecture.
I told my kids right up, I'm like, I honestly don't know what that is, but I will find out.
Yeah. I do that too, though, to be, I do that too, like, I'm not an electrician, I'm not a plumber, I'm not an engineer. I have friends that are, and I'm happy to pass that off,
I
like,
think the more often people hear that we're not trying to pretend we know
No.
it all, people
That's good.
have a whole lot more confidence in you.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah,
When you, you're like, oh.
pretty comfortable saying,
well, we're not really sure.
yeah,
But
yeah,
it's like, yeah,
I
we
do.
get back to you on that, yeah.
do that all the time, like I said, I've got a list of people that are experts in different fields, and
Yeah.
happy to text them, like, what am I looking
Yeah.
at?
I know.
And Sally's dad who did the rent out,
That's the best.
they always bring their father to the inspection and it's like, why did we bring the inspector if your father was everything?
I get a father going tonight before the inspector comes. See if they should spend the money on the inspector. Like, cool,
Wow.
go, tonight it's happening,
So
Saturday.
that's all I had. Any questions from anybody here?
So what's the dad's background? Is he like a banker? or-
I'm excited to find it.
Chat box at the bottom if you.
Okay,
Thank you, Dan.
yeah, thanks,
Really, really
Sherry.
appreciate it. That was
You're
awesome.
Thank you very much.
Oh, that's good. It's so good to have extra information. I feel like the more we know, the better we're able
End
to
of day.
serve our,
All right, thanks, everybody.
better people we are to serve.
See ya.
See you later.
Bye, Sherry.
Hi, Sherry.
Bye.
Bye, people. Bye, guys.
Makes it